All
We
right.
have liftoff.
I don't know. All right. Your event is starting anyway. We'll have to see what happens. See if apparently it's on. We'll just have to. I don't know.
Apparently
I
we're
can't
on.
tell if it is. If anyone if anyone if anyone can hear us or whatever, let us know because I have no idea whether it's live or not.
It
Just,
should be.
yeah,
Is
hopefully.
it streaming like? Are you on your chat on your
Yeah, I
YouTube
can see the chat.
thing?
I can't
Yeah.
tell it's actually live on anything. I don't know. I can't tell.
Oh,
It's like,
okay. Yeah, there's someone in the chat saying
Someone in the chat saying
that
yes to you.
you're winning BWP. Only 7 on Chris's channel.
No, 9 actually. 9.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
Oh, someone said
Stand
yes.
corrected.
Oh,
Yay!
oh, yay. Okay. So we're good. We're good. Okay.
Right, we're here.
Hold on 2 seconds. I've just got to
yeah.
press go on a couple other things. And then we're all good to rock and roll all night.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, I got like half an hour, so
what's that, Davey?
Oh, what was that?
I got like half an hour, so I can't quite do this all night. Like, I think.
We, how long are we gonna set? We're gonna do like an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. Don't
Well,
want to do any more than that.
well,
do we?
let's do an hour and then we'll judge to see how we feel. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
9 o'clock. I'll keep an eye on the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Cool. Right.
and
Okay.
yeah, if any,
Yeah. Sorry. What were you
sorry,
gonna say,
Chris.
Emma?
No, I was just gonna say, everyone, please hit the like button on. If you're watching on Chris's or you're watching on mine, please hit the like button because that
Oh yeah, helps
does
us
something
helps
good.
us get
Yeah,
seen. I
helps us
think.
somewhere.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
smash that like button. So
please.
yeah, I better do the intro then. So yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the first ever me and Banana Warrior Princess live debate. Really exciting. Really happy to have Davey on board. Do you want to say hi, Davey?
Hi.
Hi. Davey's been kind enough to hop on the chat. So first rule of Debate Club: be nice to Davey, everyone. Right? I don't want to see any people being knobs in the chat. Otherwise, we'll kick you out.
I'm
Yeah.
likely never going to see the chat, so.
Okay, okay. Carry on being knobs to Davey. He can't see it.
You can be as mean as you want. I can.
Yeah. So yeah, if you just tuned in, not really sure what's going on. Basically, we're doing a vegan versus ex-vegan live debate. We're going to be discussing the ethics of veganism, and then talking about political veganism and I guess effective activism. Call it that, Davey, and your kind of views on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got quite a lot to say on that as well. That I probably will agree with Davey on some points of it, actually. So
Yeah,
be interesting
I'd
to
imagine
talk
we
about
both
that, yeah.
will. So yeah, so I guess to kind of start off the debate, then we'll just kind of clarify kind of positions, so we kind of get an understanding of where everyone's at. So obviously, from an ethical point of view with veganism, my position is it's unnecessary. We have alternatives available, and I think that it's morally wrong to do in 2017. I guess that's the quickest way of doing it. Emma, do you want to?
My position is, well, basically, I come at it from a sort of like a logical perspective. So basically, if I can't justify the same ill treatment to myself, I can't really justify it on another sentient life. Essentially, I can't justify the devaluation. So it's not really sort of an emotional position. It's more of a sort of a logical one, really. I can't justify it, so therefore, that's why I'm vegan. Simple as that.
Cool. And Davey?
I mean, mine's quite simple. I was vegan for a long time, and the sort of psychological barriers which led me to being vegan just they're not really there anymore. I mean, like there are certainly things that led to that, but ultimately, I don't consider it a problem anymore.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll start with that then. Maybe we can start with what was it that made you go vegan initially?
So obviously, when we were kids, we were into punk rock, and there was especially like loads of sort of straight edge and vegan punk rock out there. I mean, I had my very first foray into animal rights activism when I was like, I think I was maybe 9 years old. and I found out what vivisection was, and I went home and started writing letters to every company I could think of. It kind of led from there. Like I was like having conversations with my mom when I was like 9 and 10, and saying like, oh, this is bad, and they shouldn't test on animals, but ultimately I kind of want to keep eating them. And then as time went on and I kind of progressed through my teenage years, I just started reading more and more about veganism. Ultimately went vegan, I think about 14, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was basically just through various bits of propaganda that were put out there by a range of different organizations. So PETA were obviously one of them. Obviously, being into punk rock, we had quite a lot of contact with, or, well, not contact, but we received quite a lot of propaganda from groups like the ALF. Um, yeah, ultimately, all that kind of got to me in the end, and I just decided that I didn't want to take part in that system anymore.
Okay. So what was it then, I guess, led you to not be vegan, I guess is the important thing we kind of
I mean, it was kind of the same line of thinking, really, is that I didn't want to be a sort of a part of this what I saw as a system of abuse at the time. Um, and so when I was sort of early 20s, I started adopting veganism, and I instead of eating exclusively vegan food, I would eat non-vegan food, but only if I'd stolen it, basically.
Okay.
Because I mean, to me, it seemed almost more like ultimately, if I'm going into Tesco's and I'm buying I'm buying myself a set of like Linda McCartney sausages, like the £2 I paid for those, like Tesco don't discriminate where they put that money, like that goes into a big pot. And so to me, it seemed way more ethical to actually steal whatever food I liked, and consume that than it did to to go in there and spend some money on the vegan thing, and expect that that would somehow lead to a more them sort of expect that them to sort of lead that to the reduction of the non-vegan market in regards to, well, sorry, expect that to lead to a reduction of the non-vegan market rather than just an expansion of the vegan one.
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately, I just kind of stopped seeing that we were making a difference, and after a while, I stopped, being it stopped affecting me emotionally anymore. Like I could watch the same propaganda, could watch new propaganda, and yeah, factory farming still, it still put me off massively, and I actively avoided that. But the sort of emotional reaction that was there when I was young just wasn't there anymore when I was an adult.
Right. Okay. And do you still practice, say, veganism, or you just kind of
No,
just go
I
with
don't.
whatever now?
I don't anymore. No, I've got kids. I can't just shoplift all my food anymore.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
um, yeah. I mean, like, I still consider animal welfare a lot when I buy food. Like, I mean, I do buy like, I do apologize because I appreciate this is the most irritating thing to hear when you're a vegan, but um, yeah, like I do buy exclusively free range, but like properly free range food, not just like been open the cage door for an hour a day free range. I don't really eat all that much meat, I don't think, although I do probably eat it every day, but the portions I eat are quite small. Um, I don't really use dairy, but that's just as much health as it is ethics. And then eggs and things like that, I buy again like properly free range stuff, not just like again let them out of the cage for an hour a day.
I mean, do you think we need animal products in our diets? Is it an essential thing to have?
Well, I mean, it's certainly expedient. Um, I I don't think that. I mean, I don't think that that it's 100% necessary. I mean, obviously, vegans are living proof that people can get by without animal produce, But I mean, we can get by without an enormous range of things, and it doesn't mean we're going to stop doing them.
Yeah. I mean, Emma, obviously you've got some questions you wanted to. Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, my question would be, um, do you think it's morally justifiable to kill animals for food?
Well, I think you've kind of got to look at where those morals come from,
Yeah.
and ultimately, I would have to reduce morals to a sort of intellectualization. Fuck's sake. Intellectualization. I can't say that word. What's wrong with it? I hope everyone knows where I'm going. Intellectualization. Thank you
Oh,
very
okay.
much.
Yeah.
There we go.
Of an emotional reaction, and
Is it an emotional
that
reaction?
I think so. Yeah.
Could it be a logical position, do you think?
Well, obviously, you would disagree with me on that. You describe your veganism as inherently logical.
Yeah.
Um, I would argue that the decision that you couldn't justify inflicting that on yourself, or a brother or a sister, um, parent, child, whatever. I mean, for me, that is emotional. That's not a logical sort of reaction. I mean, it's not a kind of it's certainly got no sort of mathematical quality or scientific quality to it. That is an emotional reaction.
Well, I mean,
Um,
sorry, go on. Oh,
no, carry on.
oh, in terms of like logical consistency, though, if you wouldn't want to inflict suffering onto another human being, how can you inflict it onto an animal and be consistent with with your value system? If that makes does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't see and I don't see um, sort of a dichotomy between those two emotional reactions. I mean, I certainly have no desire to kill and eat a human. I've never been in a situation where that might be necessary, so I can't say that I definitely wouldn't. But I like to think that I would hold out for as long as I possibly could.
I mean,
Um,
Davey, would you
then,
say that to give something lower moral value to was it moral devalue something, you have to justify it. So we can't just assert that something is lower in moral value there. So we have to explain why that is.
I mean, again, I used to see veganism as kind of like an expression, as like the final expression
Yeah.
of a lot of different struggles against different power structures, whether that was class or patriarchy or white supremacy or whatever. I kind of I saw veganism as this is what people just tend to do to things that they consider lower themselves. They'll enslave them. They will. The logical conclusion of that is to kill and consume them as we do to animals. But again, I mean, it does just sort of disregard a lot of practice which has gone on for God knows how many thousands of years. And
Would you
I'm
say
not
just
going to
because
say now.
would you say just because we've done
But,
something for a long time that makes it morally justifiable though?
well, I mean, you'd have to point me to something that we've done for that long.
We kept slaves for quite a while.
Well, I think we're
Really
going on a bit of a
did.
tangent here, though. If we go back to the question of, is it morally justifiable to devalue a life, and if so,
Well,
why? I think we need to
well,
go
certainly
over
does
that
have
first
different
before we.
thoughts. Yeah, well, okay, for me, life certainly does have different values. I mean, I don't think that's a particularly controversial
Yeah.
position to take. Certainly, animals that have been. I mean, like I say, I can't get on board with factory farming. I never will.
Yeah.
But for animals that have been raised, I mean, none of these animals have got any chance of looking after themselves, and we have bred them that way. There's no reversing that now. Um,
If I give you an
yeah,
example, Davey, though, of like an example of how somebody could be devalued for sort of like an arbitrary reason. For instance, like if I was to say to you, your life is meaningless because you've got yellow teeth and I've got white teeth, or something like that, would you agree that's sort of like an arbitrary reason for devaluing that person's life?
well, I mean, I don't think I disagree with your position on taking it. I mean, we're not going to be friends
Yeah.
if you take that position, but
Well, yeah, it's like a silly reason, isn't it,
if
to
that's your
devalue?
value system, you can
Yeah.
have it. It doesn't bother me. Like,
So do you think that if you take the same position and apply it to an animal, like they're a pig, therefore they don't deserve the right to life. Do you think that's, because I don't know, whatever the case may be, like taste, pleasure, or for health reasons, whatever the case may be, do you think that's
I mean,
sort of,
certainly the way that I consume meat, they do have a decent life beforehand, and that's not to say that like
yeah,
oh they give
I'm not arguing that. I'm sure they do, you go for sort
um
of like high welfare options and stuff like that. But do you think there's the actual act of the slaughter, if you wouldn't want that inflicted upon yourself as a human being, then what justification is there for devaluing their life? Is there sort of like a trait or a difference between us and the pig or the cow and the chicken or whatever animal you want to eat? Is there any difference between us that would make it acceptable to kill one and not the other? And if so, do you know what that might be?
there is certainly a difference of different of conscious though, isn't there? I mean, like
Consciousness,
there's
yeah.
no there's no way to. I mean, animals have they don't have they certainly have learning and they have instinct,
Yeah.
but they don't have it the way we do. I mean, the only animal which I would kind of like, some animals which, for example, I can't bring myself to eat. Like, I can't bring myself to eat calamari because Jesus Christ, octopuses are clever. Um,
What's that?
and
What's the animal?
Oh,
Sorry.
calamari. It's like
Calamari.
squid, isn't it?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah. Like, I mean, they're like, octopuses are clever. They are like arguably just as clever as humans. They really are clever.
What about
And
pigs?
yeah, but they're not as clever as
Yeah.
pig.
I mean,
No, I'm sorry, I'm
pigs have
being
been shown to
flippant.
be as intelligent as a 3-year-old child, which is more intelligent than dogs.
Yeah, but then there's plenty of people that would eat dogs.
Yeah.
There is, but we
Um,
obviously,
I
yeah.
mean,
Go on, Chris. I
Oh,
was completely forgotten what I was going to say then. Going back to the difference thing. Um,
yeah. I was just going to say, you're saying about obviously level of consciousness there.
yeah,
I
that was
mean,
it.
yeah. I
Consciousness.
mean, would you say that if, say, a human had the same level of consciousness as a cow or a pig, that it would then justify us killing and eating the human because they then have the same level of consciousness?
and well, again, it's back to the level of emotional attachment, isn't it? No, of course not, because I have a much stronger emotional attachment to a human with low intelligence than I do to a cow.
But
What about,
does emotional attachment, does that alone devalue? I mean, obviously, it can make you value certain lives more. For example, members of your family or something. But it doesn't. It shouldn't take away from the basic right, right of something's life. The right to live of another being. I can't see how it would it would bring up the value or bring up the moral value personally, but I can't see how it would devalue.
Okay, but then that's the sort of that's the position that you will take, having had that reaction. Is that for you emotionally you can equate, or you will equate all life together. I won't. Not anymore.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's emotional. It's more, obviously the saying, do
You
unto
can
others as you
try and
would
put a
want.
value system behind it, and you can try and sort of rationalize your decision, which is perfectly fine to do. Um, but ultimately, it is going to come down to that, whether I personally, have that reaction to the idea of a animal life being taken, or I don't, and I don't, and you do. I
Mm.
mean, I don't think there's really much. There's not a whole lot of education. I mean, especially for me, having seen enormous amounts of the propaganda, having been affected by enormous amounts of the propaganda in the past. I mean, there's no level of education that can be provided there that can produce that reaction in me, and that's the way for an enormous amount of people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to provoke an emotional
yeah,
reaction
no,
as
it
such.
doesn't. It doesn't for me. Like I'm not emotionally attached to animals.
I think it's more just a basic moral consistency of where, if we see two beings that are, both sentient, both feeling, feel pain, feel emotion, themselves, then it's justifying the difference of treatment between those two, and to say, well, why can I treat one differently to how I would want to be treated myself? And that's not so much emotional, that's more kind of logical and moral consistency. And that's kind of what we're kind of asking is what is the justification to treat something which doesn't really have a distinct difference between humans, like in a way that we would reject.
Like it does. It has a very distinct difference.
What is that difference then?
Well, again, it's consciousness. Of course, it's consciousness.
So,
You just communicate. I mean, going back to the emotional thing,
yeah.
it's probably some level of communication. Like,
So that was the fact that we can speak. Is that what you're saying, or?
well, I mean, that's probably what that one of the things that I should think would put up a block to that reaction. And I mean, I am going to insist that for me, that it is an emotional reaction that produces these things, regardless of whether it can be logically or whatever. But for a lot of people, I imagine it would be that they, for example, they can't understand or can't sort of conceive of that animal suffering. So therefore, it will be dehumanized. Of course, it's dehumanized because it's not human, but it will be devalued. It's not for me. That's not the way I justify it. For me, I justify it just because the reaction's not there. I've seen all the propaganda. I've seen all that, and I do place a lower value on it. And it's certainly not really going to be convincing me otherwise on that.
No, it's not so much. It's not so much convincing you. It's just trying to understand the logic and the mindset behind it. I guess. Because obviously you're saying about maybe kind of speaking and consciousness. I mean, again, if we brought those traits to a human, and we brought the level of consciousness of a human down to a less conscious level, to maybe a level where it can't talk. Maybe
so someone of the severe learning difficulties, for instance.
Yeah, who's got the same consciousness and abilities as an animal.
Probably less than a pig, actually, like a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, would that then morally justify killing and eating the human?
Hugely, this is the exact argument that so strongly put me off veganism, is that massive lack of any level of intersectional thinking. To compare someone with learning difficulties to a pig.
I know that's the thing. It's not comparing. It's just showing. It's a logical comparison.
I've heard it before. I've heard this so many times before. That this does seem to be the argument that veganism falls back on.
Is it not? Why is it not a good argument? I mean, how is it? Is it invalid? Are you saying it's an invalid argument?
I mean, you can't dehumanize people with learning difficulties. That's just not.
Oh no, we're not looking to.
No, we're not. Them. No, not.
No, that's not the point of the.
Okay, so you might feel like you're using it to humanize the animal rather than dehumanize the person, but it is always going to come across like you're dehumanizing the person.
I mean, if it comes across like that, that's fair enough. But I mean, I think what it is it's more showing that there is no trait present in animals that if we had that trait that we would reject our right to life. So, and therefore by moral consistency, it doesn't make any sense that we would continue to kill them when we would never want it done to ourselves. And that's what it is. It's not comparing. It's not saying that animals are the same as a disabled person. It's not saying that at all. It's more trying to even out the scale, I guess, and try and be like, well, if they were on the same level, would that be okay to do it to one but not the other, when they've got the same differences, if that makes sense? Does that make sense, or am I kind of rambling a little bit?
Well, I mean, I kind of get the argument you try to make, but it is nonetheless. I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but this I think was like 1997, 1998, something like this. And I know a vast majority of vegans have got a huge issue with PETA anyway. But I mean, this led, like, that, using that very argument led to such public outcry that their vice president got sacked.
What was the actual argument they were using there? Remember?
Well, I think exactly what paraphrasing what he said was something that, like, he felt that animals should have the same rights as a child, or
that's absurd.
Yeah, a child with learning difficulties, or a human without learning difficulties, or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, but that is around about what he
I mean,
said.
just clarify my position on that. I don't think
Yeah.
that humans and animals should have the same rights. I mean, I don't think
No,
there's no
we're not
point
going to
in,
give.
no point in giving a cow the right to vote or the rights to drive a car or anything like that. We are different. As a species, humans are a superior species. In many ways, whether it be in a higher intellect, whether it be maybe a higher level of sentience or consciousness or whatever. But I think the basic right to life is something that is still something that everything should have, unless we can justify taking that away from. I guess. And I don't agree with all PETA's comparisons
Yeah,
as
no,
well.
no,
Just so you know, I don't. There's some things
no.
that maybe especially more from a effective activism point of view than anything else.
Yeah, give them some credit. They sent me stickers when I was like 15.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying everything they do bad. But I mean, I think everyone, PETA do some good things, they do some questionable things. We all kind of know that.
But I mean, you kind of like, I mean, you acknowledge yourself there that like we are superior, and like I'm not, I'm never going to fall back on arguments like, oh, it's natural, or like, oh, food chain or whatever. But we are omnivorous.
Well, are we?
Um,
Can you 100% prove that?
well, yeah, I mean, we massively struggle to break down um plant material that most other herbivores can comfortably eat.
For instance.
Grass, leaves. I mean, we have to even a good portion of berries, things which like the things like the vegetable matter and fruit matter that we eat actually has to be prepared in quite a specific way. It has to be farmed in quite a specific way. And a lot of the arguments I usually kind of get back from vegans would be that oh humans aren't omnivorous because we can't, for example, just pick up and eat a chicken without cooking it. But reasonably, there's a good portion of like a vegetation out there that would stone dead kill us quicker than eating a chicken would kill us.
We don't need to eat
Um,
those things, though, do we? Because we've got like fruits and vegetables, and grains and pulses, and pizza and chips and ice cream, all that kind of stuff.
yeah, maybe you're not
Vegan
coming at
ice
this
cream.
from maybe you're not coming at this from a strictly sort of organic vegan standpoint. But I mean, if you're using the example of sort of pizza and chips and things like that, I mean, these things have to be prepared. It takes way longer to make a pizza from scratch than it does to make a burger from scratch. Like this,
Yeah, but
um,
that's not an argument to, you know, kill and eat animals, is it?
it's the
Just,
argument that I usually encounter
More
when
of a
sort of
convenience argument, isn't it?
yeah.
wars. I mean,
But
I think
going, sorry, Davey, going back to the omnivore thing though, is there like is it like there's going to be some kind of enzyme present in our stomachs that we're able to digest and eat meat, or do, is it just like
we,
is it just like where
we've
do you
not
get
got
that
the
from? What's
we've not got the enzymes
yeah.
present that are needed to consume things that the vast majority of natural herbivores would eat.
I mean, one thing I always fall back on is before we had weapons and tools, how were we consuming meat in general? Because we don't have the ability to run and take down a cow because they're massive. I mean, and it seems more that we are built as like our closest relatives, like bonobos, chimps, things like that, which have a very high plant intake diet. If they do eat meat, it's normally from a scavenging point of view, but they're definitely it's not a kind of biological requirement.
When did we not have weapons? I mean,
Oh,
like every
Yeah.
civilization, every human civilization we've
or
ever
if you think
had.
way before we invented fire, or we thought, oh, we're going to use this as a knife. We're just going to be like everything else. We'll just be like the monkeys are now. The monkeys are only like
Well, yeah, yeah,
chimps have only just started to
historic,
develop tools.
historically that isn't relevant at all because there's never been a human civilization that didn't have um, some semblance of technology, some
Oh yeah,
semblance of
Yeah, humans are way more intelligent. We've got the brain capacity to think of all these things.
but
But
this is assuming that we were
that's
put on
true.
the earth as
I mean,
a
like
fully intelligent
some of
being
the
that can use
earliest
tools.
some of the earliest things we've ever discovered have been weaponry. And if you can look at the oldest cave paintings that you can find, the Sumpjet Gorge, if you ever fancy the trip there, depict humans hunting.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
But
these things would have been done when we're at a certain level of intelligence to be able to do paintings and things.
yeah.
But before that, if we're going to, I mean, I don't want to have a
But
big
before
discussion
that,
about evolutionary theory because we'll be here forever. But I mean, if we're, if that is the case and we evolved from lesser beings, then there would have been a quite a large period of time where we wouldn't have been doing these things because we wouldn't have the intelligence to, and we would have developed that over years. It seems a
so we
bit
were
strange.
omnivores at that time. It's just that we didn't eat. If you want to have a look at it in regards, I mean, if you can go to Paynton Zoo and have a look at some gorillas. I mean, they eat bugs. They do eat small animals if they can get hold of them. But
Yeah. I mean,
and
I don't think we're disputing that we can't digest the, bugs or cooked meat or whatever.
well,
But does that
I said
necessarily,
that we
does
were
that,
omnivores and sort of asked me to question it, so I kind of have.
do you
Yeah.
necessarily think that we should though, just because you can do something that we should? Like might means right?
Well, but it's obviously something that I mean that we have done for a very long time. We are obviously omnivorous creatures,
But you're not going to fall
and
back on appeal to tradition, are you? Because that's,
I'm not saying it based on tradition. I'm
yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
it's some.
You can't just use
I mean,
that argument alone.
tradition is something that goes back several generations. I mean, this is apart from maybe reproduction, something that we have done since day dot.
But
Like, I mean, and there is no parallel to that in terms of like this isn't like every Christmas we have apple pie. Like that's a tradition.
Yeah,
Like
but
this
I
is
guess regardless how long we've done it in 2017, if we have alternatives available, and we don't need to do it anymore, and it obviously causes suffering and harm to other sentient beings, don't you think it?
and,
Don't you think it'd be
more
something we should avoid if we have the opportunity to? Like, should we just carry on just because we've done it for a long time, or should we
I'm more
make
than happy for
a
people
change
to,
to not do?
well, I'm more than happy for people to work towards making farming, more, for lack of a better word, ethical. Like animal welfare standards should absolutely be respected. I've got no sympathy for people with, an electric stun gun, which barely ever works. Um, giving something a shot through the head and then sticking it up on a chainsaw conveyor belt. Like that will never have my sympathy. That animal is suffering and it's suffered since the day it was born. But it,
Do
again,
you not think killing on its own is suffering?
depends how
yeah,
it's done.
what's the definition of suffering?
I mean, it would be enormously difficult for me to define.
Yeah,
Without
how is death not suffering? That's what I put it that way.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was trying to say. I
what's
guess.
done. I mean, I'm not again. The suffering should be kept to an absolute minimum.
What?
But I don't
So
think
no
there's.
death. That'll be no
Well,
suffering then. That'll be 100% not suffering.
the highest welfare standards they are, the animal does suffer very little in death, and it's not to say that it isn't going to suffer at all, but then all animals do kind of suffer a little bit when they're certainly of any species, we're inflicting the least suffering during death.
But I mean, I guess if it's completely avoidable, and we obviously because we do have other foods available, why are we continuing to do it? Why are we just not letting them get on with it? I mean, because we obviously have no biological need for animal products in our diet, so we're not eating it for survival anymore. It's purely for taste pleasure, to be honest. So it seems a bit kind of strange that we would continue to do something that harms when we've got the option not to.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see that it causes the harm that you do. I really don't. And
But would you not define killing in itself as harm? Like if
Yeah,
I'd
if you
imagine
just find
you
it,
don't want to be killed yourself.
just to add on to that, yeah, exactly, Chris. If you define death as harm to yourself, if it happened to you, then how is it any different, for an animal?
Well, I'm not saying that I have any this isn't like a sort of I completely accept the death of myself at any stage, but we kind of go around in the same circle as that.
You wouldn't accept it if somebody, say, like if an alien overlord came. I know that this is a cliche and this is an overused example, but if an alien overlord came down tomorrow and decided to use Earth's resources and just decided humans are tasty, we're gonna breed them and eat them, you wouldn't accept your death to feed the alien overlord, would you?
Probably not. No.
No. So it's the same. Like it works, doesn't it? That logic
Depends what they
works.
were offering. I'm not really sure. Um, but when I mean, it's not a good example because then you're talking about two intelligent species kind of in a position of conflict. You're not talking about a species which has certainly selectively bred these animals to a point where they could not look after themselves anymore.
So that
It
means it's justifiable because they can't look
generations.
after themselves.
Well, I mean, what do you think? I mean, what do you think would happen to chickens?
I mean, should we
Like, I
should we
mean,
maybe stop breeding them, and then we
we
won't have a
could
problem?
certainly, but then I think you're going to have a look at this in terms of probably biodiversity, in that every single thing that we, everything. I mean, like, how many animals in the world are we going to be short at that point?
I mean, I guess
Because
a question I'd ask is, obviously you said, the
ultimately
animals.
we're both talking about death.
Oh wait,
We
wait,
are.
David.
Your position leads to just as many animals dying as mine.
In in
It's
in
just that
in,
you're.
in what in what way does our
Well, if you
position
don't.
cause as
Hang
many
on a
deaths?
sec. But before we get onto that though,
Okay.
can we just like just confirm that is it acceptable to kill and eat an animal? Is it? I mean, is it acceptable? Is it acceptable to kill an animal if they suffer? Is it? Put it this way: if you didn't kill it for
Yeah, I don't
food, would
think
it be
it's
acceptable
fun.
just to stab an animal to death?
No, I mean, I really don't think you should kill things just for fun, but I think that's for different reasons that I think that
Yeah, but
um,
they're not going to know any different, are they? I suppose.
they're not going to know any different. But I am looking at this from like a kind of like psychological viewpoint
Yeah.
more than the sort of animal rights viewpoint. I am always going to worry about someone who enjoys killing stuff. Um, but that is, like I say, that is from a psychological viewpoint, not an animal rights one.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
Biodiversity.
I can't remember. Oh yeah, what I was going to say, yeah, was
And
you were saying about all the animals that we've currently got on the planet are, you know, they would struggle to live wild because they have been obviously bred for farming. Um, so using, I mean, if they were basically man-made animals, which is what they are, is there really any ethical problem if we did just let them die out? Really, I mean, would that not be better that they're not suffering? I mean, there would still be types of cow in the world, there would still be types of sheep in the world. They just wouldn't be the domestic kind, or there'd be some in sanctuary. So, would that necessarily be a bad thing? Is it better to have very very few rather than a lot that are suffering?
But I mean, if both of our viewpoints lead to the animal dying, the only thing that's different is the way in which the way in which it meets that death.
I'd be more looking at them not being bred, and then they won't exist in the
yeah,
first
because
place.
what I mean. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, carry on.
I've got. Yeah, I just want to ask because otherwise I'll just forget. like, hang on, I completely forgot what you were talking about now.
Cows.
What were you saying?
Domestic cows and breeding, not breeding.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. If is it better to for someone not to exist in the first place, or for them to exist and then have their life taken prematurely? Because if they don't exist, then they have no consciousness to experience pain. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I honestly I don't think you'd ever get an answer to that question. I
Why
think that
not?
you well what you well better for something to live and then die or never live at all. I mean that's like it's
Yeah,
just straight nonsense thinking, isn't it? Like I mean you're not going to get it. I think you're looking at how badly depressed the person who answers that question is.
what do you
Um,
mean? Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's a really, I mean, that is a really nihilist way of thinking, isn't it? I mean, like, whether it's better to live and
Well, it's
die
not.
or
I mean, it is a valid question, though, isn't it? I mean, if
no, no, that
you
is
is it not?
because
Why
I mean,
not?
it's not an answerable question. I mean, there's no. I mean, obviously for you, it's better to not have lived. But I really don't think that there's any. You could ever reach a definitive answer as to whether it is better to have lived or
Okay,
died.
put it into context of humans then. If you knew that your child was going to be born and raised to be slaughtered at the age of 3, would you prefer that they wouldn't be born at all?
Um, I mean, it's not a parallel
Why not?
because well, it's not a parallel. It's just not because I have that forethought.
But why?
Because,
What?
well,
Why is it apparent?
well, because I have the forethought, I have the ability to make a decision on that. Like, I mean, it's
So we can make decisions on whether we choose to eat animals or not, and whether to breed them into existence. So
well, but
how is it not a parallel? You know what I'm saying?
well,
It's like, yeah,
I don't think it's a power. I mean, no, you're right. I probably wouldn't. I probably would actively avoid pregnancies if that said it's not me that's going to carry the child, so it's not really my decision in the first place. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I would probably strongly discourage a partner of mine to from getting pregnant if we knew the child was going to be
yeah,
slaughtered. Really. Um, but at the same time, there have been human civilizations throughout history who, knowing the subjugation that they faced, did still continue to have children. So you are in, whilst I can say in this context, knowing that that's never a possibility, that I would
yeah.
not raise my
But I
child.
mean, do you base all of your opinions on that of other people, or do you go by what you feel?
Well, I mean,
Like my,
again, if you don't base all of your opinions on different inputs from other people and other sources, then I mean, you've got no argument at all. All you've got is, I mean, yeah, you've got no argument if you're not taking other people's opinions into account. But
hang on, why? Because like if you think it's wrong to do something, like if you've got a sort of like a value system,
I mean, it's just bloody minded. I mean, if you're not willing to listen to another person's point of view and take it on board and at least weigh up, I mean, you've got something to learn from everybody. I
yeah.
mean, I don't want to make this really broadly philosophical, but I mean, like the seemingly least intelligent person you've ever met, you've got something to learn from. Like, I mean, to flatly deny that and I mean this is where it comes back to an emotional reaction for me as well. Like if you're flatly refusing anybody else's point of view or
Yeah.
willing to stand from anyone, you are just acting on emotional reaction. There's no
So just to clarify, then, you would rather your child be born into existence to be slaughtered than for them to not to
well,
exist at all.
I'm not in that situation, so I can't make a call on it. But what I
I
can say
know,
is
but
that civilizations throughout
I know,
history.
but it is a hypothetical situation, and it is a valid
Yeah, of course it is.
hypothetical
But
to you.
I mean, what I can say is that civilizations, human civilizations throughout history, knowing that their children were going to be born into subjugation, did still have children. I mean,
Yeah, but
I
is that not is that like an appeal to popularity, Chris?
Um,
I don't know.
no, I mean not
Oh,
particularly. It's just something kind of like, in the same way they can make a choice
it's
with a human, we can make a choice with an animal. So they don't really see, I don't really see what the kind of difference is. Uh, if we wouldn't, I mean, yeah, I mean, people can make a decision to do that if if it's their own child and they want to make a decision to bring a child, knowing that there could be hardship or pain within that child's life, then they're making that decision. But I mean, with the animals, we know exactly what's going to happen to them. It's not as if like it's like a 50-50 chance they might have a good life. It's
yeah.
like they are going to die, and it's weighing up the do we actually need to bring them into this world? Is there actually a valid reason to? Which I think is the main kind of point of the argument. Is there a reason we're doing this? The reason we're breeding these animals when it's not a requirement.
is that a question to me? Sorry,
Sorry, I guess it was more of a statement than a question.
sorry.
I should have put a question mark on the end for you. One thing I did want to say that you said a minute ago about how our position harms as much as your position.
Yeah,
Would you care to
we forgot that. Sorry,
explain? Yeah,
yeah.
would you mind explaining kind of how and why that is?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's gonna, if you want to, well, I mean, I kind of think that we've kind of already covered it, is that your situation needs to, none of these animals, if you want to stop breeding them, which is absolutely fine for you to take that position, we do just end up in that argument, don't we, of whether it's better to have lived and died or not lived.
But I wouldn't say. I mean,
I don't know really what more ground we could cover on that particular issue.
because
If you want
because I
to
would.
seek to breed these animals out of existence, um, I do think that, I mean, I don't know, I'm not in any way an expert on biodiversity, but I would think that that would have ecological consequences, certainly. Um,
Potentially in a good way,
I
though, because I mean, if you think that 95% of Amazon deforestation is due to cattle and cattle feed, then surely the not having cattle on that land and letting the Amazon, potentially, regrow could be quite a good thing. Just
a
as
huge
one
amount of
example.
Amazon has also gone to develop soy fields. Like, let's not forget
But
that.
Yeah,
only about 6% of soy is actually fed to humans. The rest, majority of soy is actually for either biofuels or for cattle feed. So
Okay.
we'd still be eliminating a large
Amazon is
majority of
another
the
one.
soy.
The Amazon is just about gone now. I mean, there's very little that we can do about that. I mean,
but Davey, would you agree that it takes a lot more soy and grain to sustain an animal's life to feed to us, and it would just to directly eat the crops? Like, magnitude, orders of magnitude more crops to feed livestock animals.
um, I wouldn't. No, it comes down to biomass, doesn't it? I don't know whether
Well, I mean, because if you're gonna raise like a cow to feed you, then it's throughout its lifetime it's gonna eat a shitload of food, right? But if you just went directly to the source and cut out the middle man, the cow,
The middle cow.
then the middle cow, yeah, then obviously it's gonna that's way less food. Do you see what I'm saying? Because you have to
I
sustain
mean,
that cow's life throughout its lifetime before it dies.
we're gonna have to consume the same level of calories, though, aren't we? So actually, I mean, just give me a second. I'll maths it. So I mean,
Well, if you think
You don't. Sorry, go on.
if you think about it in this sense, that there's 60 billion land animals present that are eating around 50% of all the world's crops. So, and there's the amount of food they're eating is not is more than the whole of humans on the planet need. So I think that maths just kind of does it alone. We're feeding more to them than we actually need. If we didn't have the cows and we just ate the crops, we'd actually have more than we need.
what do you think would happen to it, though?
In what sense?
What do you think would happen to those crops?
Would happen to the crops? Well,
Do you think there'd suddenly be some, like, really egalitarian future where we'd reached where suddenly world hunger was eliminated and
oh no. I mean, I think that it's certainly it's
well,
certainly not an end fix. It's not just a perfect fix where we eliminate them and suddenly all these crops are available to us. There's a hell of a lot of other factors. But what it does do is it gives us the opportunity to progress into that kind of thing where we have more land available to grow potentially other crops. So I don't think we could just live off of all soy.
Yeah, and it's much more sustainable, right?
Yeah, and it's sustainable long term, but because you think about the growing human population. I mean, what we got 100 and is it 100 and how many humans have we got on the planet again? I can't remember now.
7 billion.
7 billion at the moment. Yeah,
yes, 7.2 billion.
yeah. So we got obviously that amount, and that is growing rapidly. And the move with livestock from intensive situations into pasture is completely not possible because just literally due to the amount of land we would have to give these creatures. So the only option is to then intensify the farming. So what were we going to say, Davey?
I mean, it seems like, yeah, this is a figure that you'd probably have. You said it was 60 billion.
There's 60 billion. There's 60 billion land animals, that, which we kill per year for food, and marine animals it could be as high as 2.7 trillion.
Okay, so I mean, if you, it's just in regard, like, I'm kind of again thinking about it in sort of mathematical terms.
Yeah,
That's less than 10 animals each a year.
it's
So actually,
0. I can actually tell you. I actually watched a talk on this. How much was it? you eat something like, each person eats about, I think it's 20, this could be slightly wrong, but it's around this. I think it's about 25 fish, 15 chickens, zero point 0.8 of a pig, and half a cow each person.
Right, cool. I'm not sure that adds up because I mean, like I say, if you've got 60 billion land animals and there's 7.2 billion people, I mean, if you take fish out of the equation just for a second,
Yeah,
like that is that. I mean, that's less than 10 animals a year. So you actually probably kind of winning already. Like there's certainly people don't eat less than 10 animals a year. Um, you're probably in a situation where actually the majority of the world is already vegetarian, at least.
yeah, that's what we're trying to go for, and then obviously to be, but yeah, I mean, like it's just the resources and everything that we need to maintain 60 billion land animals is absolutely huge. Like if we're talking about environment stuff, you probably already know, like the UN report shows that animal agriculture is causing more greenhouse gases than all the world's transport combined. It's also the number one cause of the ocean dead zones, deforestation, species extinction. It's a global environmental disaster.
I mean, in fact, like I sort of give you if those figures are correct,
Yeah, I
then
can provide
I give you
sources
that
if
is
you
the
want to.
one argument that I could see convincing me to turn vegan is that from just purely an ecological point of view, it does seem to be a bit more sustainable.
Yeah.
So there you go. You can have that one victory if you like.
Hey, thanks, Davey. Yeah, it is like I mean, it's an absolutely huge problem. I mean, basically cow farts, are producing
Oh, hello.
Hello.
cow farts.
Oh,
Oh, are you still there? Or am I just saying cow
yeah,
farts a lot?
Chris, you broke up a bit, but you're back now.
Oh, that's right. I was just saying cow farts, so it just must have sounded a
Oh
bit
yeah.
weird. But yeah, it's basically cow farts that are producing all this methane into the world, and that's what's the one of the leading causes of greenhouse gas emissions. It's crazy, and transport is responsible for 13%, and um, livestock is potentially up to 51% of world.
No, it's
Depending on
18%
what,
though, yeah.
what's that?
18%.
It's between 18 and
Go
51.
with 18. Yeah.
It's depending on which. There's two studies. There's the World Watch study,
I'll
which
go with the more conservative one though, just
yeah,
because.
but yeah,
Yeah.
between 18 to 51, depending on which study you read, because they take into I can't remember what it is now, breathing or something. I can't remember, but I can link people to studies if they want to see. But either way, it's more than transportation, which is crazy. And obviously, methane is it's more destructive than CO2 as well, which goes into the atmosphere. So yeah, it's pretty bad from an environmental point of view.
It's not why you do it though, is it?
What's that? Well, no, for
No,
me,
I
it's ethical.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. The reason I gave up being vegan is ethical, but obviously, from learning all of this, it does make me very concerned about environmental stuff, which is why I know my facts about it. Because in the end,
I mean,
I'm living on this planet. If I ever have children or anything, they're going to be continuing to live on this planet, and I want to make sure that it's in a decent condition. I don't, and in the end, environment destruction is killing more animals, and even if it's just ethical reasons, that's a reason for me to want to protect the
So
environment.
what other sort of green steps do you take? Is
Um,
that
oh, what? Just in general, kind of
yeah?
things. Well, at the moment, I'm looking to grow my own food, which is going to be a good thing. I really,
You're not at the
really,
moment.
I'm really, really annoyed at the moment, but I don't have a car. I don't drive. Walk everywhere pretty much. What other green things do I do? Try not, try not to use too much water. Recycle where possible. Although my flat currently doesn't have recycle bins, which really, really annoys me. So if someone could sort that out, that would be really helpful because it annoys me every time I put stuff in the bin and I can't
Anyone from the
separate it,
council?
which is a really lame thing to be annoyed about, but I get annoyed about it all the time.
No, no, not by recycling. It's good.
Yeah.
So it does kind of make my earlier point though, doesn't it? Like that veganism for you is an emotional reaction. Like these things will support it and do justify that reaction, but in terms of saying that it's great for the environment, which you have demonstrated that it is, it's if it wasn't, if it was the other way around and vegetables were going to cause that much, like 18% worth of, um, 18%
Yeah,
of the greenhouse gases, do you think that you would still be vegan?
I still would. I still would because I think I prioritize life more than the environment. I prioritize the value of an animal
Yeah.
over the environment.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I just do.
I don't think,
Sentience over, yeah, the environment.
yeah, I don't think the environment isn't the main issue for me. It's,
No,
you
me
know,
neither. It's not my problem.
I, you know, I've been brought up, you know, to be an animal lover, and I spend a lot of time around animals, and I see that they are living, breathing beings. And I have, you know, I can't see a reason to want to cause unnecessary harm to them. You know, you know, some people say that it's an emotional thing, but then there's other animals that people don't like, but they're still not going to kill them just because, you know, like some people, you know, some vegans hate spiders, but they're not going to kill a spider because they know that it shouldn't. It's not an emotional thing as such. It's living. I'm going to let it crack on with its day and
Yeah, just because
do
it's
what
an
it wants to do.
inconvenience. It's an inconvenience. It doesn't necessarily mean you should kill it. It's just, well, just put it
Yeah,
outside,
I
put it in a
agree.
cupboard, put it
Yeah.
outside. It doesn't not going to take you
Yeah.
any longer
So
to kill it than it will to put it outside. So
just to clarify, I'm not saying that there isn't an emotional attachment, because obviously I do care about animals, and obviously, you know, I do have an emotional attachment with animals, and you know, I won't deny that. But obviously, you know, regardless of the animal, regardless even whether it was an animal and it was another living, you know, species that maybe I hated, I would still stand up for their right to life. You know, because everything has a right to life, unless
yeah, because
unless there's a reason for it not to, and
yeah, because
that's
like
what we've got to determine.
they've done nothing wrong, right? They're innocent. I mean, why do we need to kill them when there's plenty of other options to eat?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the basics of it, really.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't kill bugs. I put big bugs outside. I can't just kill it because it's there. In fact, to be honest, I don't really even really bother putting bugs outside, like unless it's like a wasp or something, which is actually going to try and, you know, sting me. And like I just leave it. Like it's just
That's good.
happy with it.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to do. Protect the bugs. Yay.
But also, I just want to bring up actually that there's like this. There is a sliding scale of sentience, isn't there? So, like, guilty. I've killed a few bugs probably accidentally in the last year or so since I've been vegan. Disgust.
Never being your friend again, Emma. Never disowned you.
Bugs dying on my windscreen when I drive in my car. You know?
No more Friday night debates.
Yeah. Oh, just
Actually,
just to
yeah,
let everyone know, it
yeah.
is. We have got to the hour, so I mean, I'm happy to carry
Do,
on, because we
do we
did
want?
we did want to discuss the other thing as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which we can maybe. But
Radical veganism.
it depends. Did we want to move on to that, or Emma, did you want to carry on?
Yeah, I'm happy to because I think we've covered.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've done the
So we've
ethics,
kind of
haven't we?
covered, yeah, the kind of the ethical side. So now we're going to kind of discuss, I guess, yeah, kind of effective activism and some of Davey's concerns, which are, I think, some of the things that kind of led you to not being vegan as well. So, Davey, if you want to maybe kind of talk us through a bit more about your views
Yeah.
on that
So
sort of stuff.
obviously earlier on I kind of outlined a little bit of kind of what ended my veganism, but one of the things that did um really kind of produce what you kind of might call a level of apathy in me in regards to the lives of animals is that towards the end, I mean, when I first went vegan, I was the only vegan I knew, and so I didn't have to interact with them, which was, to be honest, wonderful. And then I moved away and sort of got in contact kind of with a lot more activists, not just vegans, but people from all sorts of sort of paths and in activism in general. And I think the thing that really started to get me with the majority of vegans is number one, the sort of sanctimony and the sort of general
Yeah.
sort of fundamentalism that many of them do seem to embody. But I think the main thing for me was the lack of intersectionality in their thinking. You know, veganism was the only and highest struggle, and everything else came second. And
Yeah.
they were happy to compare animals to, you know, people with learning difficulties. They were happy to compare animals to sort of African chattel slavery. They were happy to compare animals to sort of female enslavement. And towards the end, I couldn't cope with it anymore. Like I just I couldn't cope with it anymore because if I've never had any problems with vegans. I'm not anti-vegan in any way, shape, or form. But for me, the big issue I have is that the majority of activist vegans I've met in my life have only had that one thing in mind and will disregard every single other person's struggle to put that forward. And so in the end, when I was kind of like, I almost kind of found myself in a position where I wanted to eat meat just to irritate these people, which I know isn't great. I mean, it's a really childish and really obnoxious attitude to take. But they were starting to make me so angry with these attitudes that I couldn't be a part of myself, be a part of them anymore. I mean, they as well just didn't seem to mind who they worked with to pursue the ultimate aim of global veganism. And so that ended up with things like the sort of National Socialist vegan cake shop in Camden. I mean, like Nazi vegan cake. I mean,
Oh wow,
you're
really?
gonna have to explain to me how anybody can justify working with that far right just to pursue, well, not just to pursue, but to pursue their agenda. I mean, like, I mean, that's a really, really destructive sort of path to go down. And there were quite a lot of situations where vegans and animal rights activists would side with extremely far right groups, individuals, etc., to push forward the sort of the case for veganism. And I mean, I even at my most angry vegan stage, I've always hated, and I think rightly, always hated Nazis more than I hate people who eat meat. And for a lot of these people, it just didn't seem to be there. There used to seem to be no concept of struggling for any level of human suffering before struggling for that of animals, and it drove me mad.
So they were like, what's the word? Misanthropist? Is that the word?
Misanthropy,
Misanthropist?
Yeah,
but they hate humans.
yeah.
Oh, so
Was
okay,
it
I've
like
never heard
that?
that.
Yeah.
I've never heard that phrase before.
Misanthropy, yeah, like
Yeah,
where you hate you hate humans basically,
yeah,
but you put animal
Okay.
lives before human lives and stuff like that.
yeah. Well,
Was it a bit like that?
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, again, it wasn't. It was kind of more than that because I'm not gonna like if you love animals more than humans, that doesn't really bother me. But like, I think it was almost utilizing human struggles to push forward and trying to compare human struggles to that of like animals to sort of push forward their agenda that used to really wind me up. Like I say, comparing animals to kids with learning disabilities, comparing animals to African chattel slaves, to comparing animals to female slaves. That like that's what used to really wind me up.
we actually
And
saw a talk at VegFest last year by a woman called Brenda Carter, who actually spoke a lot about exactly what you're talking about. And I mean, my kind of position on this is some of the comparisons. As someone who obviously from what we just spoke about, I don't see a particularly a big difference between us and animals. Anything that justifies any sort of difference in treatment, as we just discussed. So some of the comparisons, obviously not all of them, but I understand why people use them. Whether people should use them, though, is something I'm very strong with, because I think unless you're in that mind frame where you get that kind of, the similarities and you're on that kind of level, which I guess I am, people will find it offensive and they will fight against it, and it is not effective activism in any way. And I totally agree with that.
because it's yeah, because it's triggering, right?
Yeah,
It's that kind of language.
it's totally triggering, and you've got to realize that non-vegans are not on the same level. They haven't got that same connection between humans and animals that maybe we do, and they're not going to see it in the same way. It's just going to cause people to get really annoyed. And like I'm in like so many vegan groups on Facebook. Like I must be like 30 or something. So I see stuff come up on my wall constantly, and there are it's a constant thing. So David, I totally can understand why you would
I get annoyed of it as well. I really do when people do that. I just when I'm sort of naming differences now between like the name the trait thing. I just like someone's got yellow teeth, another person's got white teeth, or because somebody's got I don't know a monobrow compared to somebody who hasn't. You know, I just use arbitrary reasons like that now because it can be really triggering to use language like, comparing animals to slaves and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's like, I guess one of the biggest, most controversial ones is when people compare the animals to the Holocaust, which is a huge one, and obviously that may be the one that you were talking about, Davey, with PETA, because I know they got a lot of flack for doing a comparison to the Holocaust. But again, I mean, my girlfriend, who's actually obsessed with the war and Holocaust, she finds it really interesting. She originally went, but she was vegan because she saw the comparison, because she used to watch a lot of documentaries and she saw like chickens, and she went, oh, they're in the same condition as them. But again, it's kind of like, I can see the comparisons, but then there are obviously a lot of differences as well. I can never say it's exactly the same because they're two completely different things. I mean, obviously Hitler was trying to destroy the Jews for a completely different reason than people kill animals. So that can't really be compared. But again, I would say despite the comparisons, whether they're valid or not, it's about being effective. And I think using a lot of these examples are ineffective. I think they get people's backs up. Obviously, Davey, I guess you're a prime example of why these don't work. I guess.
Oh, but Davey, I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? What do you think a better method for activism would be if you were going to convince somebody to become vegan? What would you tell them, or how would you persuade them?
I think it'd be difficult for me to construct that argument because I wouldn't really mean it. But
But thinking from a vegan's perspective, what would you say?
I don't know. It's a unique situation. There is certainly no comparison with any human suffering. If yeah, there is no comparison with any human suffering, whatever it is.
So how would you go about persuading? If say put yourself in a vegan's shoes and
Honestly, I'll answer that question. I don't know how I'd go about it. I
would you think about it for me?
Yeah, I mean, the ability to do it without being dogmatic. I mean, all you can, for me, all you could do would be appeal, um, appeal emotionally. But again, I don't know if I really consider I mean, I'm never going to argue against anyone's right to argue for most things. I mean, there are things that I'll obviously dispute people's right to argue for. But I mean, for me, veganism is a personal choice. It's not a political system. It always was. I didn't take part in it because I didn't want to take part in it. It was never that I disputed its right to exist. You know, the thought of eating flesh at the time turned my stomach, and that was enough for me. But I never had any problems with my friends eating meat. You know, I never had any problems with being at events where there was meat. I sort of would actively target vivisectionists or fox hunters for doing what they were doing for what I saw as no gain whatsoever. But I don't think I would ever argue for sort of an expansion of veganism, bar putting information out there and letting people make their own decision on it.
I mean,
So for someone like me,
you
someone
can.
like me, someone like myself, I approach people in the street and ask them questions, sort of philosophical questions about like in an epistemological way. Just I focus on what their beliefs are and how they come to those belief systems about why it's necessary and right to eat animals. So for someone like myself, can you think of a way that would make my activism more effective? Like, because I do use I don't use comparisons to slaves or anything like that, but I do try and go down the path of I want people to I want to highlight any contradictions in people's belief systems. Do you see what I'm saying? So I will,
Yeah,
yeah. So for someone like me, what do you think is that effective, or can you think of any way that would improve my
again,
street
for
activism?
me, because you it's such a liberal attitude for me to take because I'm really normally not in any way that sort of sickening, just put the information out there, people will take it or they won't sort of like, there are certain situations, and I think a lot of political situations which require a more radical approach. But I, I think veganism I think because I don't see veganism as a political issue, I would say that actually doing videos, yeah, fine, do Facebook, yeah, do pamphlets, go to stalls, that's absolutely fine, and hand out this information if people want to take it. But I think even in your sense, whilst actually I don't disagree that it probably is quite effective to stop people in the street and sort of challenge them at a moment's notice to question that sort of point of view. I don't doubt that's actually probably quite effective in the short term, but again, I just think it's not it's my own value system. I don't think it's a pressing enough issue to have to want to stop people in the street.
Yeah, sure. I know,
And
I understand that you don't think it's not important to you, but I'm just trying to see from a non-vegan's perspective because I want to be effective in my activism. Can you see any way that would, make my street activism more effective?
I would
Um,
just be passive in it. I really would. I wouldn't go for a sort of radical, or even
is it radical to
confront.
ask people questions?
No, radical. I was
Oh,
going to
sorry.
say, yeah, no, I was then going to say confrontational, and regard decided that was too strong as well. But I can't think of a word in between passive and confrontational.
Like
Yeah, I mean,
say like in any other context, if I was asking someone about, I don't know, can't think of anything. Not veganism. Can you like I don't know, just say I don't know.
but then, I mean, like
Chris,
if you
help me out.
someone,
Like in any other
stop someone in the
context,
street and
we've
ask
been asking
them,
questions
yeah,
that are
stop
confrontational
them in the
or
street and ask them who they're going to vote for. They're still probably not going to answer you. Like, um,
I,
I mean,
something that's not
what sort of rate?
political then. Something that's not
I
political.
mean, do you mind me asking what sort of rate? Like how? Like when you're trying to stop people in the street, how many people stop?
Quite a few. I'd say more stop than I mean. Well, actually, probably about half and half.
Uh-huh.
Some people just don't have time, or they're too shy.
Okay.
So
And what kind of responses do you get from? I have to excuse me. I've not seen your channel.
that's right. Actually, well, because I live in Norwich, it's a fairly sort of progressive, liberal kind of place.
Yeah.
So it's it's quite easy. And most of the people I talk to, I'd probably say half of the people I talk to are at least vegetarian anyway. So it's just sort of like, well, why not go just be vegan? I mean, most people just don't they haven't heard about the atrocities in the egg and the dairy industry, so they just But in terms of what are you asking,
I
sort of
mean,
like a success rate or?
yeah. Well, I mean, like I'm gonna move on. I think that kind of answers what I was looking to kind of get out of the question. But I mean, especially with the I mean, Norwich isn't. It's certainly not poverty stricken in the way that other places are. Um, and obviously, one of the big criticisms labeled at veganism is that it's classist and that people just can't. The majority of working class people would never be able to afford to accommodate that sort of balanced diet in Iceland. It's just not going to happen.
Are you saying that
Um,
veganism is expensive?
I'm not saying that veganism is expensive. I'm saying that veganism is not feasible when you are restricted to where you can buy your produce, and that being the
Okay.
really low end of the market, like
So
the really.
if you are in a position where there's no problem just to go to the supermarket, it's just down the road. Someone like that,
Well,
it's
I mean,
feasible for them to become.
more the ability to actually to afford which supermarket you're going into for a great many people. Even the idea of going to Tesco is actually completely above their price range. Um, and especially as we've got I mean, I think it's what like 1 million people in the UK now that are dependent on food banks. I mean, you're just at the mercy of whatever people give.
Yeah, but I
I
mean,
mean,
for the majority of people, that's not the case, though, right? I mean,
well, I wouldn't say so. I would say that actually most people do. I mean, I certainly consider myself to have a certain amount of financial privilege, and I'm a
mm,
student. I'm certainly doing a lot better financially than I would say probably the majority of the country, and I feel no shame for that, but I feel no pride for it either. Um, and I have to be, I struggle to accommodate like high welfare food, and it does mean that I eat considerably less. I mean, what do I eat? I eat four dinners a week with meat in them, and it is like very small portions.
Because
So
it's expensive, the high welfare free range.
yeah, the high welfare
Mm.
stuff, and to be honest, vegan stuff is even more expensive.
Are you talking about
Um,
the meat substitutes and that kind of thing, the vegan alternatives to meat?
well, to be
Or
honest, even if you're just buying decent quality fruit and veg, like y-
if
the
you,
idea of making a vegetable based meal, 7 times a week is going to cost you more than just being, just sort of wandering into Iceland and picking yourself up uh, sort of
okay,
like a 20 bag of sausages for two
I,
pounds.
not
okay, so if
And
you
necessarily.
that is the
Not
economic
not
reality of a lot
necessarily,
of
because
people.
you can get Linda McCartney sausages for £1.50 in Tesco, and beans, legumes,
Yeah,
rice,
it's
pasta are some
six.
of the cheapest foods on earth. And like,
yeah, no, if we were going to compare, okay, let's take a shepherd's pie. I made a shepherd's pie tonight, right? It was bloody lovely. I really enjoyed it, and I've still got probably 5 or 6 portions left. I made out of like a tin of beans, what it was just 40p. Lentils, like a huge bag of I don't know, was it like 500 grams lentils? And I used probably like a third of the pack, and then tinned tomatoes, some like gravy granules, a few herbs and spices, that kind of thing, and then potatoes. Like, how much does that cost? And if you swap the lentils and the beans for um, beef mince, like which one's more expensive there? Do you see what I'm saying? Like the comparison.
Yeah, but the mince not only tends to arrive in larger portions, but actually you probably can get beef mince for the same amount, if not less money. It's just shit quality.
Yeah, but I've still got lentils left over and beans left over. I haven't
I
even
mean, you
put
still
into
have
it
beef
yet.
mince, but it's just shit quality. Like
What's that?
and you would still have beef mince left over as well, but I mean, it's just really poor quality. I mean, unquestionably, meat is cheaper than like really poor quality meat is cheaper
The
than
lentils.
yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's
How
a
much is
question
a
of
pack? How much is a pack of lentils? I'm going to go into Tesco's now and find out because I don't think I really beg to differ.
well, I mean, the thing is, if it's the same price, if we're talking about the same price, then surely,
but I think
um,
it is cheap. You again once more kind of like if you're kind of using a Tesco's example, whereas actually Tesco's is out of the price range of a vast swathes of
but I mean, even if you
um.
shop at like Lidl or Aldi, you can still get plenty of
I mean, like
insanely cheap food.
again, even Lil and Aldi. I mean, like I'm like a great many people around the country now are reliant on places
Okay,
like Iceland, which are like they're even cheaper than Little and Aldi, and you can get
right,
like a
Davey,
week's worth of meat for like £2.
Davey.
Yeah.
500
Yeah.
grams of red split lentils, £1.15.
Okay, cool, but that still doesn't. I mean, it doesn't change my point. Like, I mean, you can go to Iceland and get a week's worth of meat for like less than less like £2-3. It's not good, but that is just the economic reality of a huge amount of people in the
Two,
UK.
250 grams of lean beef steak mince, 5% fat. Oh no, that's the high quality stuff. Okay, let's try and find the cheapest.
I mean, I
You're
get,
still using Tesco.
But
I guess the thing is though, like, yes, there may be people that are in a financial position where they struggle with food, and I get that, but the majority
It's
of people,
millions of people, though. You're not talking about like the odd one. Like it is millions of people.
but there are still millions and millions of other people that are going to have absolutely no problems doing it. I mean, like you think about some of the poorest countries in the world. I mean, they're pretty much living
Sorry.
off a plant-based diet because rice and beans
five
are so
500
cheap.
grams of really the cheapest mince is £1.69. So just saying.
You should work for Tesco now, Emma. Learn all the
Really,
prices.
yeah, you probably wouldn't want to do the shopping for people, though, would you?
Be a bit weird.
So, I mean, we've got it's now 30% child poverty rate in as of 2010. So that's before we've seen like 7 years of austerity. So that figure has unquestionably gone up
Yeah.
by probably quite a lot. I think the last time I checked it, 3.7 million children are living in what would be termed poverty. And that is 3.7 million children who are spending, 10, 20 quid a week on all the food for their entire family. So that's probably at least 3 people. And you can't get that quantity of vegan food,
But
not for 3 people, not for 7 days,
don't you
not for
think?
like 10 or
Don't you
15
think
pounds.
But meat is more expensive. I don't understand the argument.
It's not though.
But
It's
I've just
not.
proved it is.
It's really not. You proved it is in one supermarket, but
Okay, we'll go now. I'll go
you've not.
because does
Well,
Aldi
the one thing I was going to
price
say
on
though is, for as I said, with these people that are on a lower income, I mean, yeah, maybe the price thing is an excuse for them, but I mean, if the rest of the country, if it's
not
not
an excuse, it's an economic reality.
yeah, but yeah, okay, a reality for them then. But even if the rest of the country, adopted that kind of diet, they would actually be able to affect the pricing to bring those foods to be cheaper for those.
And you've got to realise
for
that
the-
meat
for
is
those
heavily
lower ones.
subsidised as well.
Yeah, true.
I think this is one of the things that I think is always a bit of a misconception for veganism as well, is that the idea that if more people start buying vegan food, by logic, the meat industry decreases. Whereas most supermarkets are certainly, they're not going to see it like that. They're going to see a increase in the vegan market, so they will stock more vegan food. But that isn't necessarily going to lead to a decrease in non-vegan food.
Well, it would, because if someone's buying a meat substitute over meat, then therefore the supply has now gone to the vegans and not to the vegan product and not to the meat. So therefore, it's swapping product. It's just supply and demand.
Why?
That's very much assuming that the economy works on supply and demand, and
yeah,
it doesn't. There have been plenty of situations where supply has vastly outstripped demand, and so huge amounts have been disposed of, simply to artificially float prices.
Oh yeah, I mean that's been the case with like the dairy industry, for example. That's what's happened with them. They're finding they could tip away their milk and actually make more money. But it also leaves them in a bit of a shit position, which is hence why a lot of dairy farms are currently closing, and they're not in a good position. So as much as you might get that supply and demand thing for a while, that it's not sustainable for those businesses to remain like that. It's going to affect them, and eventually they're going to have to do something about it.
You would have thought that would be unsustainable already, though, and it's chugging along. I mean, we've seen massive crises in world economies over the last in the last 10, 15 years before that, 20 years before that, or 20 years before that. It's never collapsed, and I don't think that it's. I can't see a situation where that would be allowed to happen. I think it is a complete misnomer to assume that a rise in a vegan market would mean a decline in a non-vegan market.
In terms of the expense of a vegan diet, have you actually researched it and to see whether it's viable? Have you actually compared it to what like a normal?
I went vegan again briefly last year for about a year. And my food costs went up. There's no way. And at the time as well, I'm not saying that I was living in I think it would officially be described as poverty, but I didn't like to think of it as poverty. And my food costs at the time were £40 a week, £50 a week for a family of 4. And when I went back to veganism, I couldn't keep it under 60.
But remember I asked, what were you actually eating?
What, just for yourself?
A lot of people that
just for yourself?
No, not
just for your family.
For the 4 of us, yeah. And that was eating pretty poor quality vegan food, and also, for a lot of people, that extra £20 just doesn't exist. I was just putting it on a credit card, but for a lot of people, that extra £20, £30 just doesn't exist.
But was that more expensive because you
Um,
were having to buy additional vegan food on top of the food for the rest of the family, or were the whole family
no,
eating vegan?
no, um, no, it was for all four of us.
So all four of you were eating vegan within that time.
Yeah.
Okay. And what exactly were you buying that was more expensive?
I wouldn't be able to list it sort of thing, but I think it was a while ago.
So do you like make the same kind of meals, but just like the vegan versions of it? You know, like lasagna, pasta dishes,
Yeah,
and shepherd's
mostly I was kind
pies,
of
and
making
chilies,
the
and
same sort of
curries.
meals. Yeah, the same sort of meals. Oh no, man, you want to try giving my kids a curry that does not work. Um, I was the only the only thing I could get the kids to enjoy was the vegan hot dogs. I actually still eat the vegan hot dogs because they were tasty.
Sounds
Um,
expensive.
they were actually they were like, how much were they? They were like I think they were like £2 for 12 or something like that. No, £2
Oh,
for 9.
okay. Well, that's right.
Um, Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can't recall individual meals. It was over 12 months ago now. But yeah, I mean, I did try it, and it is unquestionably more expensive. But
Well, and
hey,
so, but what's the comparison? Like, were you having more like fresh fruits and vegetables to compensate for the lack of dairy and meat? Was it like a displacement there, or
um,
was it just like for like?
well, no, I mean, it was kind of like I tried to incorporate some meat substitutes, and then also tried to learn just some sort of straight, like almost organic vegan recipes as well. Although obviously the food I was buying wasn't organic, but like um so I was trying to do meals that contain no meat and no meat substitute as well.
Sorry, can you repeat that last bit? I was just
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, like I was doing some meals which were just like for like, so things like shepherd's pies,
Mm.
vegan hot dogs, stuff like that. But then at the same time, I was also trying to do meals that were like no meat and then no meat substitute either. So even if it was like just like a vegetable stew or something like that, then
I mean, I guess
Mm.
a question I want to ask. I mean, if someone is in a financial situation to eat a vegan diet, which we know it isn't that much. I mean, a big majority of us would be able to do that. Obviously, we know there's ethical concern as well, and there's also environmental concern. I mean, what reason have people got not to do it?
well, I mean, I was kind of speaking about this in terms of effective activism. Is that, yeah, certainly people draw comparisons, like some vegans will draw comparisons between various human atrocities and what has been leveled at animals, but there are more subtle things as well, which and the very first time I actually encountered this was when I was on a vegan stall when I was vegan, like back when I was sort of, I think I was probably 17, 18 at the time, was a lady kind of took me to one side and showed me her weekly sort of food budget and like kind of challenged me then and there to sort of, work out how she could go vegan in there within that budget. And I absolutely couldn't do this. Bear in mind that, I mean, this was like, like 12 years ago when, certainly vegan produce, substitute produce at least, wasn't as available as it is today. You pretty much had to go to Holland and Barrett if you were living in Devon and you wanted a sort of vegan meat substitute.
Mm.
Um, but this is what I mean in terms of effective activism is, yeah, I mean, obviously don't draw comparisons with human atrocities, but obviously just be aware as well that you're sort of, it may be not such a problem in Norwich, but even in Torquay, um, there's a lot of poverty, and stopping people in the street and sort of questioning them about a diet that they're probably not all that thrilled with anyway. Um, it can be classist, and in terms of effective activism, stopping people in the street may well not be that effective because it is kind of singling people out who can't necessarily afford that diet.
I don't think I agree. I don't think it's. I don't think. I mean, I live. My wage is a grand a month, so I'm less than minimum wage basically. And
Is that
it's. I mean,
on the air?
I think if I was becoming omnivore, it'd become a lot more expensive. because meat is expensive, and I wouldn't want to go for the cheap stuff either. You know, if I was to think like an omnivore that had ethical concerns with um,
I mean,
rearing meat, you know, I'd go for the free range and all that kind of stuff.
the thing is,
Sure.
the thing is, I'm kind of saying though is we seem to be talking about like the people that aren't in a position to maybe do it in a financial, which is fine. I mean, they've got a bit of an excuse, but what I think is, you know,
Yeah,
we're not in that.
free food is free food at the end of the day. If you're a homeless person,
Yeah, I mean,
you can't choose.
you know, people, most of us,
But
you know,
it's not the
either
home
watching
anymore.
this or
It's a really
involved
huge
in this
amount
are not
of.
in that situation. So it's more kind of like, so what is our reason? I don't
Well,
think.
but I mean, I think that you're seeing this as a smaller problem than it is. We now have nurses, police officers, firefighters who are having to use food banks.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that.
That's
I
not.
understand those people, but the thing is, with unless we can get these products
You're
to
kind of
become cheaper
increasing the
and more
narrative
readily
of
available,
people's
we're not
like.
going to help them. They're not going to get there. So we need to be supporting this product, and if we can, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be supporting these products for whatever reasons, environmental, ethical. And I'm kind of just trying to work out why we wouldn't. If we're in a position to do so, why wouldn't we
Yeah,
choose to do that? That's more what I'm kind of getting at.
Well, I mean, it's your decision. You know, I'm certainly not taking any away from you if you feel like you can accommodate that, and if you are happy to live within the parameters. I mean, there's no problem. I've never had a problem with individual people deciding to live as a vegan, and I never will. Um, I I think the thing that I'm getting at is that for a vast majority of people, I don't think you're going to be able to convince them that suffering a further level of poverty than they already are is
in,
worth
in terms of
the.
activism, then, if I was to approach someone on the street and I knew, I don't know how I'd know this beforehand, that they, were struggling financially. And are you saying that I shouldn't even introduce the idea to them? Like if I introduce the idea
But
to
the
them
thing
and
is,
they agree with it, that's a bad
you're not
idea?
introducing the idea to them. You're stopping them on camera and putting them on the spot with a random question about something they probably can't afford.
Okay, let's say off the camera then.
And so, I mean, that is like that. That's not introducing the idea to someone. That is singling someone out.
Okay, so
I mean,
off
and
off cam
I don't know how you do it. I don't know whether
off
you would
yes.
set
Okay.
you would.
So let's work through this
Sure.
then, like, because obviously I want to become the best activist. If it was off camera and I knew that they, had money troubles, are you saying that I shouldn't introduce that idea to them at all? Because are you
No, of
saying
course not.
that they wouldn't
I mean,
care?
I would struggle to believe that there's many people who don't know what veganism is, but I'm not saying don't introduce ideas to people, but I think that singling people out. I mean, I know
Yeah, but if
Chris,
I
you
wasn't,
stalls, don't you? Like, I mean, I know Chris's stalls. You know, I don't know how Chris conducts himself on those stalls, whether he's
yeah.
actively approaching people, but I think a lot more inclusive way to do that is purely to make the information available. And if people want to then introduce themselves to the idea, then you don't have to run the risk
But
of making them feel worse about an already shitty situation.
I guess this kind of activism to me though, I mean, like I can understand from I mean from an ethical point of view, I'm and if we're going to be really kind of blunt about it, we're talking about animals being harmed and animals dying for a reason that really people can't nail down. People can't really say one reason to be like, this is exactly why we're doing it and this is why we have to do it. So I don't see why we should be treating this, this any differently to any other kind of injustice that's going on. Why shouldn't we be, approaching people and talking to people in the same way that if there was someone, it's the same
Yeah,
way,
because it's
in the same way the dogs trust are out there on the street, it's being like, there's homeless dogs, we need to give them homes, we need to do this. I can't see how this cause is any less important, especially when we encompass the environmental, the ethics, and something we haven't even spoke about at all, which is the health aspects, which obviously You know,
And also I would add to that there's no reason whatsoever that you can't care about other issues of humanity and not be vegan at the same time.
exactly. You can care about more than one
Care about,
thing.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
because you put your heart into one cause, it's like every single person, say, that is fighting, say, child starvation in Ethiopia. It doesn't mean that they don't also that they don't also support like gay rights or other causes as well. It's just what they feel that they can put their efforts into the best they can. Um, and I do think that everyone should be. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think if you are going to be against inequality, and you're talking about inequality between humans and animals, then you should be the same with any in regards to any respect. You should be automatically, against racism, against um, homophobia, against these things. It should be standard because you're against inequality.
But would your efforts not be better placed campaigning at ways to make vegan food more affordable than it would campaigning against individual people who?
Yeah, but how do we make it more affordable? We can only make it more affordable by creating the demand for it. Then obviously,
You buy vegan food, the cheaper it's going to become.
then it brings it down. Like Linda McCartney sausages, perfect example. They're like one. You can get them for £1 in Tesco for 6 sometimes. Like they're gone down because people are buying them. The more people.
So I just advocate for just eating more vegan food.
Yeah.
That's probably not true. If anything, if they're going down, probably because the people aren't buying them.
No, because if you look at the actual stats
that's different.
If you look at stats for the vegan market, it is shooting up. So it's
especially
definitely
like the
not going
plant-based
down.
milks.
Yeah, I think the free from had a 1,500% increase.
It's expanding all the time.
Yeah.
I remember when I went to Sainsbury's when I first went vegan. I couldn't get a single vegan ice cream in Sainsbury's. Now there's a whole bloody section of different flavors. So that just shows you like how popular it's getting. Do you know what I mean?
It's not like the Swedish plays anymore.
Yeah.
There's everything now. You can get like salted caramel flavor.
Yeah, but what I'm kind of saying is I don't think that, I don't feel that it's
my own.
Yeah, I don't feel it's a cause where we should just stand back and just let people get on with it, because if people can't justify harm, then we should be fighting against it. And until someone gives me a justifiable reason to why we are doing this, then I can't see why I should.
In terms of effective activism.
Yeah, but I mean,
in terms of effective,
let him speak.
I think you're targeting the wrong end of the market.
Sorry, what was that, Davey? Say that again.
Yeah, I can say that again.
In terms of effective activism, do you not think you're targeting the wrong end of the market?
No, not really.
The consumer, ultimately, as we know, has very little power, especially singularly. En masse, you're talking differently, but the numbers required to actually take an en masse action like that are unfathomable.
So, are you saying
and you're very unlikely to ever to reach them? But you might find that you had more success targeting producers, whether that was through campaigning or direct action or whatever. You might find that you actually had significantly more success targeting the people who profit from it, certainly, and the people who are producing it in the first place.
But that's much harder to do, isn't it? We have to create a demand first to show that there's something worth investing in.
We can't tell people to make products if there's no one who's going to buy them.
Yeah.
So I mean, the easiest thing to do is introduce people to the thing and be like, look, there's all these products available.
If you want to stop the supply of not even necessarily, like if you want to ultimately severely restrict the supply of non-vegan food, I'm not saying that you should be targeting producers to promote veganism, but to promote targeting producers of sort of non-vegan products to not produce.
Well,
that's a lot of
there is campaigns out there doing that already. So, say for instance, to take milk powder out of products which would otherwise be vegan. I mean, that's the thing to do. But I mean, they put milk powder in them because it's left over from the dairy industry, and it just drives down the price. That's the only reason why they put it in.
I mean, one thing I would say, which is why doing the campaigning we do is effective, is there's a thing called I can't remember what it is. It's the tipping point, basically, where you only need something like 10% of a population to adopt an idea, and after that, it just throughout history, ideas then snowball. So I think speaking to people directly and talking to them about things, which, to be honest, most people don't know about all the things that happen out there. They don't know about the environment. They don't know what's happened to the animals. I think it's a really direct way of talking to people. And it's not as if I don't advocate going up and shouting at people. That's one thing. People that shout at people and demean people and being like, oh, you're stupid murderers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, me, it's murder and that kind of thing.
I'm completely against that. I think
it's
it's cringe. It's not effective whatsoever. But I think if you go up and speak to people on a one-on-one basis, as person to person, remembering that person was no different to you were before you went vegan, and maybe they just don't know stuff, and talk to them like a real person, I think that's really effective. And I've had good results from that. I mean, I've turned enough people vegan where I don't remember how many people I've turned vegan. So it must work.
How many are you still in contact with?
What's that, sorry?
How many are you still in contact with?
Quite a few. Yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, loads of them. Most people I've got on Facebook and stuff, and yeah, it's been great. I get people randomly adding me all the time, and
I just think, why wouldn't you give that person information, like empower them with information? They might not have seen it from that perspective, because we're all conditioned from birth to think that it's okay and acceptable to eat animal products, and we've never even questioned it. We've never, as soon as you start questioning things, that's where things change. You know what I'm saying? So why wouldn't you give somebody that opportunity where they wouldn't have thought about it before?
Well, I'm not. Again, this is kind of, it comes back to my original point of trying to think about it intersectionally, is when approaching people, you kind of have to accept that you don't know all of their various struggles, and actually they might find that the subject itself is particularly triggering for them in one way or another. And I'm not saying don't distribute the information. If you want to distribute information. But you can do that from a stall without having to actually approach people, and you would likely get just as good a success by campaigning on the other end to make sure that
you're talking about
are finding it more difficult and less profitable to produce these products, then you might actually make some level of change, because people will only stick in it as long as there's profit, and it's going to be how long has political veganism been around now? It's been going for 70 years.
Yeah, it's been going for a long time, but I mean, since the birth of social media,
but they've not significantly damaged the profits of any particular enterprise yet. Whereas a more economic approach may well be to target the other end, to target producers, to make it difficult and not profitable for them to produce this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there is those kind of things. Like, obviously, we can work on increasing the welfare that things have to bump up their prices and all that kind of stuff, which is stuff that does happen already. But I wouldn't ever discredit the effectiveness of personal one-to-one chats with people on the street.
I think that's the most effective way, is the one-to-one thing. I mean, if you're just handing out a piece of paper, it's probably just going to go in the bin, But if you're giving somebody your time,
if you engage,
I think that's more effective. Yeah, and I don't see how asking questions. I mean, I think what you're talking about, Davey, is like offloading loads of information onto that person, which is I would never do, because I want people to come to their own conclusions and research for themselves. So I would just ask them just open questions to get them thinking about something that they probably haven't thought about before. Do you see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but you can have conversations with people without approaching them.
How?
Well, allow them, if you've got your store and they're approaching you to pick up information anyway, it's perfectly reasonable to start up a conversation then.
Yeah, but most people most people don't know enough about it, and it's the thing is
they just dismiss it.
They just dismiss it. But I've had people before that seem a bit kind of you go up and speak to them, and at first they might not want to speak about it, but when you engage them and talk to them, suddenly they open up and they're like, oh right, I didn't know these things, and they're happy that you told them this. I mean, I totally agree with all the things you were saying about the comparisons and all this kind of stuff, and how all that is completely ineffective.
There's good and bad ways to talk to someone.
Yeah, I mean, in maybe with some people, if they're the right kind of person, you can bring up those comparisons and it might work. But personally, I found if those comparisons do not work for me, I find it's ineffective for me. I just don't think we. If you can explain something in another way that isn't going to trigger someone, I would always choose the other way. I think it's more about being effective than being right and trying to just make a point.
Yeah,
You know,
I think that's kind of interesting with the way you phrased it, though, is that actually you can see maybe why people get offended,
yes.
but I certainly don't think that I don't think you I don't I just have to find a way to say this that isn't really offensive
No,
itself.
no,
I
just
don't
say
think
it.
you
It's
really
all good. Just say it with you.
like because the way you describe it, you can see why it's ineffective. I don't think you can truly see why it's offensive.
No, no, I can fully see why it's offensive to non-vegans. I can fully see
But
because they do not have
the way
that.
you phrase it is definitely more along the lines that you don't use it because it's ineffective.
Yeah,
At no point have you
I
said
mean,
that you don't use it.
I'm not saying that some of the things don't have, and I'm not going to go into all ins and outs, but I don't think that all of them are invalid comparisons because I do not see a particularly big difference between humans and animals that says, well, that's
yeah.
majorly wrong compared to the other. But
From a purely logical perspective,
yeah, from a logical perspective,
yeah,
that's what I mean. Like, that there isn't,
yeah,
some things I don't see, but I know
It's
from
it's more
being not vegan
context.
that it's to other people that don't understand that and they're not in that mind frame that I am, that it's not constructive to say. It's not going to get me anywhere. And in the end, I do what I do because I want to help animals. So I'm going to do whatever's going to work for them. It's not about me.
If you
What's
if you
that,
felt
sorry?
it was effective though, you'd use it. If you felt it was effective though, you'd use it.
If I felt it was effective, if I felt that it didn't trigger people, that people would
Would you?
understand it, but I don't think people do understand it, so I'm not going to use it. Like,
yeah.
I
As I
know
said,
I
but
know
you,
people won't get it. I know people won't get it, so there's no point in me.
you don't see a difference. You will continue to alienate people. I don't think there's any way around that.
What's that? Sorry, I missed you at the beginning of that. Then sorry.
That's fine. If you genuinely don't really see a difference, I think you will continue to alienate people, and I don't think there's any way around that.
Well, that's the thing.
Well, that's why
That's
you'd
why I
ask
don't
the.
say it because I don't want to alienate people. That's why I don't. Like, it can be my own personal. As far as well, you could say, well, that's my opinion. But
You,
because I don't see it as effective, I'm not
I'm
going
not
to.
saying it's your opinion, but I'm saying that it's motivated by pragmatics as opposed to compassion, which is
but that,
different.
It's more a logic and moral consistency because I can't see the difference.
but you'd ask the person, wouldn't you? You'd ask the person whether there is a difference between humans and animals. You just go by what they'd say and tailor your responses to what they're saying.
I mean, I see it again. I do. I find that I do find that offensive. Like I can't
No, no, no.
sort of
But
sugarcoat that you would only not use an argument like comparing what happens to animals to say, for example, the plight that the Native Americans suffered when their country was invaded. Um, I mean
I, I,
that is offensive.
I think
you don't.
I think the thing to bear in mind though is we're not trying. No one's trying to say that this certain thing makes this one less. I think that's one big thing. No, it's not saying sorry. This one's worse than them all. This one, this other human thing isn't as important. It's not saying that at all. It's not making a which is worse argument. It's just using some parallels to show a similarity in the treatments. It's not saying they're the same. I think that's something that is,
There is no similarity.
yeah,
If nothing else, actually,
What about
there is no
sentience?
similarity.
well, no, I
What
mean,
about
Well,
sentience?
no, I mean, I'll agree
even
with
if you
David
chose to
there.
see the two, even if you chose to see the two beings as completely like equal in value,
No, no, that's not what. That's
the
not. That's
No, no, no.
that's.
okay,
It,
okay, well, it's a hypothetical. Even if you were to see the two beings as completely equal in value, the treatment that was meted out to a great many of the examples that I've given is significantly worse than has meted out to animals. I mean, even an animal in a factory farm, yeah, I mean, it has a horrible existence. It grows, it lives, it dies in very cramped conditions under extremely brutal conditions. Um, However, it was not rounded up. It didn't have it wasn't forced to work for years before it had to watch its whole family burn alive and go through all of those emotional reactions, which humans do have more animals. We do certainly have heightened emotional reactions.
No, I
And
agree
they're
with
much
you.
more complex
I
emotional
agree with you on
reactions.
this point, Davey. I do. Like,
And
it isn't the
for nothing
same.
more than dominance. And I mean, that's what many of these atrocities were, was they were reflected for nothing more than dominance.
Yeah,
And that
this
hasn't happened to animals.
yeah, but it's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I agree that there's a difference in suffering. Obviously,
You
humans
see
are.
similarity.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we've obviously got a more complex, sentience. We're going to
It's the,
experience things in a worse way than a chicken is. We get that. We get that. But
yeah,
it's not comparing the
but there
suffering.
can't be a similarity.
Yeah, but there can be a similarity. If two things are in a cage, there's two things in a cage. There's a similarity. It's not saying that one's suffering more than the other. It's saying they're both in a cage. Being in a cage is wrong. It's not saying,
Well, but that's decontextualizing it. I mean, like a chicken is in a cage, and so is Charles Bronson. There's two completely different things.
yeah, but
Like,
why is Charles Bronson in a cage?
well, it's two things in a cage. Like, I mean, you can't decontextualize it to the point where
Well, you can, because you
you're
can look at the
kind of
reason. You can look at the
you
reasons
can't use
why.
decontextualization to make your point.
You
Like
can
that's the way.
you,
That's just the way that
you can look at the reasons why,
unfortunately
though.
debate has to happen. Because you can't remove something from one context and remove something from a different context and put them together to make your argument because it completely.
No, no,
I mean, like I say,
that's not consistent.
It's not fair debating, if nothing else.
No, that's not a consistent position, because if you're saying like Charles Bronson and a chicken, well, the difference between those two is the chicken's an innocent chicken. Charles Bronson is not an innocent person in a thing.
There's
So
your argument.
there's your difference.
Your argument is that what you're doing there is utilizing you're utilizing a different context to make your point. You can say that there's two things in a cage, and that's your argument that a human slave was in a cage and a chicken was in a cage, and therefore those two are in similar situations because of the cage. Whereas I can say that a chicken's in a cage and Charles Bronson's in a cage, but those two things you can say are dissimilar because of the way they both ended up in that cage.
Yeah,
so for you to decontextualize to just the point of the cage,
because they are different, because because if to be consistent, if you took the difference of the chicken, which is the fact it's innocent, and applied it to Charles Bronson, then they're both in the same position. They're both innocent and in a cage, and that's both wrong. So the differences between those two treatments is that Charles Bronson has a reason to be in a cage, the chicken doesn't. Otherwise, it's inconsistent.
Well, someone argue differently, but this is what I mean, though. Like there is, you kind of you pick the points that you feel are most emotive to make the argument.
It's not so much being emotive. I mean, would you say that an innocent being in a cage is being in a cage when there's no reason for it to be in a cage? Is that wrong or right?
Sorry, say it again.
Is an innocent being being placed into captivity in a cage for no reason wrong or right?
Well, I wouldn't think about it in terms of wrong or right, because again, it's decontextualized. An innocent being in a cage certainly has a reason to be in a cage. Now, knowing context behind that.
We're saying the context is someone's picked up an innocent being and just put it in a cage for no reason. Is that wrong or right?
Well, but knowing the point that you're trying to make is that, yeah, I mean, I choose not to participate in factory farming.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, fair enough.
But in that
instance, I can say yes. Yeah, for example, I do believe that picking an innocent animal up, shoving it in a cage, making it produce, like 12 eggs a day until it's big enough to get turned into nuggets. I mean, and then it never leaving that cage. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that. I do think that's wrong.
Because what we're saying, which I think is vital to say, is we're not saying that we're not saying that they suffer the same. We're saying that the treatment is wrong in both contexts. That's what the main thing is. Yeah. It's not about one suffering more than the other. The chicken does not suffer as much as a human. That is a fact. We know that. Humans are way more intelligent. They've got way more emotion, way more feeling. The human will suffer more than the chicken, but it doesn't mean that the chicken situation is morally right. It means it's still wrong. They're both wrong. They suffer differently.
Yeah, no, and I get what you're saying now, but it's only because I forced you to that point. Like earlier on in this conversation, you were perfectly happy to just to describe that you wouldn't use the human animal comparison
No, because
because
this is
you
the thing.
felt it was infected.
This is the thing. I'm not using the human. I'm not trying to use a human comparison. We could swap the human for a chimp. Same. You know, what I'm saying is what I was trying to explain to you is that despite me not using these concepts, I was trying to explain why they're used, and that it's not to compare the two and say they are the same. It is to compare the treatment and to say that both treatment in both contexts are wrong. That's what it means. That's what I was trying to do, is just explain to why people use it, because people do think that we're trying to compare the two, and that's not right. Do you get what I mean?
No, of course,
Does that make sense, or have I got
think
it?
what I'm starting to get, what I'm kind of, I don't know if if I can find a more sort of effective way to say it, but I can't see those two as similar. I can't see the human animal comparison as similar
Well, so you can't
because
see
of the
two
context
things with
and the
two.
fact that you do will
You
always
can
think
see
that
that they're
people
both
find
sentient, though,
one
right?
Yeah,
Do you agree that they're both sentient and they can both feel pain and they can both suffer? I know that they suffer on varying degrees. Humans have got way more to lose, obviously, but do you agree that they are similar in the fact that they both share sentience?
I think you're still kind of missing that actually what happened to them is
But
very
what?
different.
But can you just answer the question before we move on,
yeah.
please?
Do you
I
concede
mean,
that
if
they're
you,
both sentient? They both feel pain. They both like no matter what, they both feel pain. They both have emotion.
I mean, certainly they both feel pain, but I mean, you're breaking it down again to a very base level of decontextualization.
But why can't we do that?
Um,
Why can't you do that?
well,
Because we've got to start
because
from a foundation and work up from there. Do you see what I'm saying? It's because you were talking about all these hypotheticals and making it really complicated, but it's not really that overly complicated if you break it down to the fundamentals. Do you see what I'm saying?
I mean, it's a complicated issue, certainly, especially when we talk about
Yeah, but
it
we've got to
as
start from square one. We've got to start from somewhere. Start from the ground up.
Oh, just to let everyone know,
Do you agree that?
we are hit. We have just hit 2
Yeah,
hours.
2 hours. Yeah,
So
we need to wrap up. Yeah.
yeah, so maybe we'll go another 5 minutes just to finish this bit off. Then we'll do closing
Yeah.
statements. Is that cool? Everyone cool with that?
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Yeah,
we're going to go on forever. Otherwise. Okay. So Emma, yeah, carry on what you're saying. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no, I just, Davey, can you just answer the question? Like, do you concede that they both share sentience and they both can experience varying degrees of pain and suffering because they share that quality?
I mean, I can concede that without letting up that I think that you're using like a decontextualization as a tool to make the point, and it doesn't mean just because I can agree that yeah they both share sort of pain receptors, um, doesn't mean that I think that the two experiences can be in any way compared or described as in any way similar.
But you don't think you could compare two similar treatments as wrong? So, for example,
Well, I don't see that. I don't.
For example, kicking a chimp and kicking which is of higher sentient ability, and kicking a chicken. Would you not say they are both wrong? It's a simple question.
It depends how angry I don't know. What's the chicken? Is it an annoying chicken? No.
They're both really friendly, nice, happy.
Yeah. Like he's really nice to his mum. He probably brings her flowers on Mother's Day.
They're both lovely. They're both upstanding citizens within their species.
Yeah. Chip's got a bit of a dodgy internet history.
But all I'm trying to say is, regardless, both acts are still wrong. Both kicking the chimp and kicking the chicken are still wrong, unless we justify the reason to do so. For example, if the chimp is attacking me and I need to kick it to get it off me, therefore I am justified in self-defense. You see where I'm coming from? And also, if you applied that to the chicken to be consistent, and the chicken was attacking me, if it was a really, really aggressive chicken and I kicked it out of the way, I'd also be justified. This is where we have to have moral consistency.
Do you think because you kind of get into a question of reasonable force there? Because I mean, if a chimp is attacking me, like I mean, a chimp is a really vicious creature. If it attacks you, you're justified to use a fucking flamethrower if you want. But if a chicken's attacking you, I don't even feel really that you're justified.
No. Okay, right. Yeah.
Walk away. Right?
Okay, no, I can take that argument. We'll pretend it's a giant chicken that's quite aggressive, right? But like, what I'm saying is, which is kind of at the point we came back to afterwards, is we're making this comparison here between chickens and the chimp to say that kicking both of them is wrong. And if there was, if the chimp attacked me and I kicked it, I'd be justified. If the giant chicken attacked me and I kicked it, it would be justified, which is consistent. So what we do is we then change the chimp to a human, and we say, right, kicking the human and kicking the chicken, they're both still wrong, unless we can justify why. Unless we can justify why kicking the chicken is now suddenly okay, but kicking the human isn't. You see what I mean? This is a really weird comparison, I know, with giant chickens and all this kind of stuff, but I hope you can kind of see where I'm getting at.
I mean, do you not see where I'm kind of coming from though, in the sense of like having to make these grand over exaggerations and grand decontextualizations?
Okay, look,
you can in logic. That's the thing. That's the great thing about logic.
Yeah, exactly what Emma said though. But logic, you can. And to be honest, it's not.
We're having a logical debate. So
in the end, it's not a big comparison. I'm going to punch a human and I'm going to punch a monkey. Why can I?
Logical debate. You just invented a giant chicken. Like it's not really.
The only reason I said giant chicken is because you said about
one of
the
the things I always hear from vegans, and I understand is a very frustrating argument for a vegan to hear, is if you were on a desert island, and you had no food, and unfortunately your partner on the island was completely inedible, and you couldn't fish or whatever, like, oh, well, I'm obviously vegan, but, would you eat meat? And, the obvious answer to that is, look, yes, in that one very specific situation, if it ever came up, yeah, I would probably eat meat.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the same, but the other way around now, is you've had to make such a grand hypothetical situation to justify.
Okay, no, it's not, because we could do this really simply, okay?
It's an analogy.
Right, you could do it really simply. Like, it's literally as simple as, okay, so you've got, say, a white person and a black person. Is it okay to punch? Is it okay to kill and eat a black person? No. Yeah? It's not okay.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, it's not okay. Okay, when we take it down to black child, it's now a child. Is it okay to kill and eat the child? No.
But you still see them similar.
Okay, now we change it to an animal. Okay, is it now okay to kill and eat the animal? If it's not, why? What has changed? What has changed? What is the difference in them? What is the exact difference between the child, the person we mentioned before, and the animal, which now makes it okay? That is what we've got to determine. If we can't determine that difference, then we just arbitrary, give them less moral value. But we haven't stated why. We've just said, we just said it's fine now, and that creates a moral double standard. So this is what we're kind of getting at. We need to explain why it's okay to do it to that being. Like, what has changed from it? Yeah, it looks different. It's not as intelligent. Mm-hmm. Its sentience maybe less. But what is the actual difference that now justifies it? A difference that if we applied that to ourselves would then mean it would be okay to do it to us. If we can't name that, then we're being inconsistent. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I understand your argument. Like, there's no, I don't agree with it, but I understand it. Like,
what I'm kind of asking is, what do you think that difference is?
Well, I mean, this is the same question that we've had since the very beginning, and I kind of explained it. I think there's a different level of consciousness. I think there's a different level of sentience, and there is a significantly wider context where you have to answer that question, where if we stop doing it, the vast majority of these animals would cease to exist altogether, and you kind of have to ask yourself whether it's better to live and die or never to have lived.
But we need to work from the foundation up again. You're overcomplicating it, like with questions.
Oh, sorry, what were you going to say, Davey? Yeah, I didn't catch what you said then.
No, carry on.
Oh, Emma, were you saying something? I lost kind of what was going on there.
Yeah, but I mean, Davey, you're just going on tangents. We just want to start from the foundation up, but I mean, we can go on about sort of conservation and biodiversity and all the rest of it, but we need to solve this problem first, this ethical problem. Is it okay to kill and eat animals for arbitrary reasons?
Well, I don't think that is necessarily the foundation.
What?
I mean, obviously it's kind of, you guys are hosting the debate, so you kind of get to, but I would dispute that was the.
So we shouldn't start from the ground up.
Well, I don't think that's the ground.
What is the ground?
I mean, any number of things could be the ground. Whether you wanted to discuss it from, I mean, you can set the ethical question if you want, but there is also the health question.
Does anything trump morality? What trumps morality and ethics? What can be more important than well-being? Put it that way.
Well, but you can't equate morality and ethics with well-being.
Why not?
Because they're two completely different things.
Morality is the right and wrong, and wrong affects something's well-being. Quite that, isn't it?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that morality and well-being are the same thing. They're often placed together in similar, often quite religious.
Call it value then. Call it value instead of morality, because morality is can be a triggering word in some contexts.
Okay. Well, I mean, why? You can pose the question why, but it's just as easy for me to pose the question why not. I mean, you guys are the ones that are arguing against hegemony. It's something that we have the ability.
So why shouldn't? So are you asking the question why shouldn't we kill animals? Is that what you're?
Well, like I say, but a lot of the times the only answer you have for that is moralistic. And
well, yeah, I mean, I can give they're sentient beings, and there's no justification to kill them. There's environmental impact of animal agriculture, and there's health impact to us on a human.
And we can survive without
them. Yeah, we have no biological need. But then when we turn it around and say, well, what are the reasons too? Then that's where it gets a bit sparse.
Well, I don't. I mean, there's plenty of human functions which don't necessarily serve any biological need that we will still do and always do.
Yeah, but you don't have to. Just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. Right?
No, but there's God knows how many human experiences which are not biologically necessary that we will never stop, nor should we.
I
think we're gonna probably wrap it up in a sec.
Yeah.
Because
otherwise we can talk about this all night.
Yeah, it's gonna go on forever, aren't we? So I don't know. Is there anything anyone else wants to say about
nothing
this?
Nothing else. My phone is on 2% battery.
Yeah, or should we get on to closing statements? Emma, is there anything else you want to say, or Davey? Anything else you want to add to this, just to wrap this bit up? Or?
No closing points. You guys can take the closing points.
You're all good.
Yeah.
Emma. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know what to kind of say. Kind of closing points, really. I guess, I would still argue that without a justification to treat another sentient being differently, then when we wouldn't want that placed upon ourselves, we do create that double standard. And the fact that we have biological need, the environmental and the health impact, I think, are enough reasons to we're in a position to do so. Adopt a vegan lifestyle. Those benefits, and I can't see a reason kind of not to. If you, I guess that's. Say, Davey, do you want
to? No, I'm good for closing. I feel like I've kind of made.
I think we've covered most things, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm here in a reactive position, so it's difficult for me to sort of summarize a reaction.
I guess our closing statements are going to be pretty much the same as our opening statements. Anyway, so, is there anything else you want to say, Emma? Or
yeah, I would just echo what you said about I think if you're going to make a case for a devaluation of something, you do have to justify it. It is necessary. Otherwise, if you don't, then you're under obligation to name a difference between humans and animals, which would justify, human slaughter if that trait didn't exist in either. So that's which is the same thing I said at the start.
Yeah.
But because I just think just to be logically consistent. You have to go down that path. You have to answer those questions, and to not, it's kind of like it's lying to yourself. It's a kind of cognitive dissonance, really. So yeah, I'd say that, but I do. Davey's raised a few things that I will take on board in terms of activism and stuff like
Yes,
that.
I'd
I
agree
do.
there,
I
yeah.
do agree with you on that, Davey. Like, I think like, the political side of activism needs work, because some vegans are just completely insufferable and can't stand them.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to disassociate myself
Yeah,
with them, because
okay,
they're the
no, I
ones that
agree.
shout the loudest, and they're the ones like they're just so ineffective. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I think some vegans piss me off as much as they do non-vegan. So yeah, I think there's definitely work to be done as far as effective activism is concerned. So yeah, I would 100% agree on those points there.
Yeah, and David, thanks very much for coming to do this. I really appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
really, yeah, definitely appreciate it. It's been good fun actually.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
And I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it. Wow.
The chat has gone crazy, but we haven't had time to read anybody's comments whatsoever. But it's just gone mad.
Yeah, I mean,
I noticed. Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, yeah, if anyone wants to ask any questions, I mean, the thing is, there's a delay on this, but if you want to put them in the chat, then maybe we can come back to them, or I don't know, Davey.
Yeah,
you signed up to YouTube, Davey? YouTube account?
I not really.
I was going to say you could possibly answer questions, but if you haven't got it, then.
I say I have a YouTube account. It's got one video on it. It's my wedding video, and
so
4 years ago, and I just use YouTube to back up that video. That's the only reason I got the account.
So make sure to go to Davey's channel, like the wedding video, give him a subscribe. He needs his numbers up.
Are you going to do an anniversary video?
We could do, actually, yeah.
I think you should
do one in 10 years or something.
Yeah, that's all good. So yeah, cheers, Davey, for coming on. Really do appreciate it. And
I really appreciate it. I think it's been awesome. I really appreciate this experience, because I haven't done anything like this before. So.
And thanks everyone in the chat for not getting too frustrated with things. I've been trying to keep up with things, and I'm going to need to read it back. There's so many comments.
When I was doing like the lentils and beef mince comparison, everyone was going crazy, like, "Oh, what about Aldi? What about Asda? This, that, the other." And they were like doing these price comparison things.
And then everyone kept putting prices up. We'll try and get the chat a bit more involved next time if we can. But obviously this is the first one we've ever done, so we just kind of wanted just to get the hang of it, see what happens. But no, it's been really good. I think it's been really constructive. So good stuff. Right.
Wonderful.
So,
I'm glad I could help.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Davey. Really appreciate your time. And everyone should go and hunt down Davey's old band, the Wounds. Are the wounds online anywhere, Davey?
Just hunt down Roland first. Sorry?
Is there any Wounds MP3s online anywhere for anyone to check out?
You know what? All the ones are still on MySpace.
Are they? Okay, well,
I do occasionally go and listen to them.
Okay, well, basically,
MySpace,
and then. Yeah. MySpace is all about music now, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just so people are aware.
I tell you what, Chris. You know what?
What were you gonna say?
You know what I was looking up like last September was. Sorry, this is completely irrelevant to the chat.
No, go for it.
But I ended up going through all the old MySpace pages of like 69 Reasons Why and Slot and all those bands.
Christ. I'm gonna have to have a look through. But yeah, just in case people didn't realise, me and Davey have actually known each other for quite a long time. We used to both be in bands, both gig together and stuff back in the old ska punk days. Good times at Room 51 in Chudley. That's what it's all about.
Right, I gotta go, guys.
Yeah, I've got to go too. I've got to go to bed.
Okay, well,
I've got to talk just before everyone goes. I've got to talk tomorrow in Norwich at the Norwich Vegan Festival. If anyone wants to come down at 12:30 to come and give me some support.
Go and see Emma. Go subscribe to Emma if you're on her channel. Subscribe to me if you're on her channel. The way around. You know what I mean. Subscribe to both of us. Subscribe to Davey's video. Give him a like on his wedding. Check out the Wounds, and we'll speak to you another time for another debate.
All right.
Cool. Right, Davey, you're free. You're free to go, mate. You're free to go. Cool. Cheers, buddy. Speak to you soon. Cool.
All right.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks very much.
Anything else you want to say, Emma? Or are we all good?
Nah, I've got to get some sleep now.
I'm going to give out some quick shout outs to people in the chat because they feel left out. Shout out to Nadine, Arnold, Hannah, Anna, Ross.
Oh yeah, Hannah, Holly.
You know,
Bandwidth Zero was in. Was that? Oh, John Yin.
36KMW, Cat the Vegan Artist, Diego, who else is in
Rusty
here?
Richardson,
I'm kind of scrolling through.
Rebecca Pawsey, is she still
Paolo,
in there?
yeah, Red Pebble, Zabadja. Who else we got in here? That's most of the ones on my chat. Yeah, cheers all for tuning in, everyone. And yeah, we will be doing another debate fairly soon. We've got a few non-vegans that are up for coming on to have a debate. So hopefully you'll tune in. So just make sure to subscribe, hit that bell for notifications or what jazz.
Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Yeah. And yeah, we'll see you all very soon. Oh, right, I'm going to press off then.
Yeah, me too. All right.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Love you. Bye. Bye. Bye.